welcome back to Rust Order Garage, back on the $5,000 budget build. I love talking like I'm on radio. 56 Chevy Pickup. All right, so I am in the middle of welding my man, are we going to start off already like this? I am in the middle of welding my rear axle perches. And you know what I just figured out? I just replaced the inner and outer lenses on my welding helmet. I can weld a whole lot better when I can actually see what I'm welding. It was quite the revelation. So anyway, I'm welding the perches up on this thing right now. Let's talk about pinion angle. All right, pinion angle, I won't get into crazy because everybody has their opinion, and I'm just gonna tell you what works for me. Basically, overall, when you're driving down the road in a perfect world, if your engine is facing, say, down like this, right? Gets my hand straight, angled down like this, your drive shaft would be, or rather your axle would be in the same plane like this, okay? That's if your rear end here, it's below your engine. Same plane, not like this, not like this, okay? That said, leaf springs cause the pinion angle to move while you're driving. It'll be going up and down. So, and under acceleration, it'll move up, and deceleration, it'll go down. So what I do, and I'm not saying this is the only way, this is what works for me. For a street car, not a drag car, because you're gonna find out different things for drag racing. For a street car, my goal is to have generally the engine and transmission 3 degrees down to the ground, okay? Might be 4, but generally 3 degrees down. Now, the rear axle, while static, I will set it at 1 degree up, not the full 3. So it's actually down a little bit, not much. This is exaggeration. Then, under acceleration and driving, it'll move up a little bit, okay? So you'll be close. They don't have to be exact, but it'll be close. So generally, I'll do 2 degrees different. So if I have my engine and transmission with the vehicle at ride height, and at ride angle. So either raked or level, whatever you've got, I will set my engine and transmission 3 degrees down. That's my crankshaft angle, and tail shaft out of the transmission. 3 down, and I'll set my rear axle 1 up. Now that's with leaf springs. You've already gone over truck arm and stuff when I did the Buick. But that's how I do it in my street cars. I'm not saying it's the only way. That's how I do it. So, I just welded the perches in, and I did take one little gamble when I did this. So like I said, before you weld your perches, the vehicle should be at the rake, the ride rake you're going to have, either back up or level, whatever, and ideally fully loaded, you know, with everything installed and set, so you know where the suspension is going to sit. Now, the little, I'll say, gamble I took, and it's an educated gamble based on what I had set up here. As you saw in the last video, I put the 6x6 of wood up on top, and I used ratchet straps to compress the suspension until my shackles back here were pretty much straight up and down. I believe that is where I'm going to be at ride height. Once I install the bed on this thing and have a full tank of gas, I think that's where I'm going to be. So I basically simulated that by compressing the springs, and then I set my pinion angle. So right now, when this was on the ground and I had things set where I want, and I know the front end of the truck is going to come down a little bit. I'm aware of that. But with the truck pretty much where I want it, I had the transmission 3 degrees down, and I set my pinion angle 1 degree up and burned it in. And we'll see how it does when we're driving it down the road. If it vibrates like a mother, well, then I guess I screwed up. But I think it's going to be okay. It's worked for me in the past. So I won't get too crazy about all that because everybody's going to have their own opinion on it. That's how I do it for leaf springs. So let's forget about that and move on to the next mini project of the big project. Well, what's next? I think while I have the rear wheels off and everything, maybe I'll get the brakes done, get the brake lines run. That's pretty boring stuff. So I don't know if I should really record it all. but I'm going to I'm going to replace each caliper hose. I'm going to relocate that. This third brake line here, that's right under the exhaust. I don't want that. So I'm probably going to cut that bracket off and weld it right to, I don't know, maybe to the axle, or maybe I'll just relocate it out of the way somewhere where it won't be too much of a problem. I could put it right there. That'd be a really short brake line, which is fine as long as I can get it in there. And yeah, let me see what I'm going to do with that. So let me get my stuff out and start replacing hoses. Okay, in progress. I did not record all of this because it's pretty boring. Oh, just brake lines. Made some new brake lines out of nickel copper and reused the spiral braid there to protect it. That was from the S10. And I relocated the rear center brake hose mount over there to the axle instead of being over here where it was, because that was going to crash into the exhaust. So now that's over to the side. That'll work better. Made a little tab for the brake hose because somehow I misplaced the one that I saved from the S10, unless I didn't save it and forgot, but I should have saved it. And all the new brake hoses are in. And what else do we do? Mounted the vent for the rear axle. That's there. Just little detail work that no one will ever see. And that is about it for the rear sections coming out good. So throw the wheels back on and then run the brake line from there up to the front, deal with the front lines, and we'll be in good shape. All right, with the back lines done, I'm going to start running the line from the master cylinder back to the rear brake hose. Now, since I'm running four-wheel disc brakes, I don't need any proportioning valve in this system. It's going to be equal pressure front and rear. I don't have to worry about that. So it's going to be direct out of the master cylinder to the rear. And on this particular master cylinder, it's the front port that actually feeds the rear brakes and the rear port that feeds the fronts. Now, it's not always that way. So depending on what master cylinder you're using, double check. All the muscle car stuff that I used to do and still do once in a while, it's the opposite. The front was for the front, the rear is for the rear. So make sure whatever master cylinder and whatever project you're doing, you understand which port is for what. And as far as lines, all I'm using is nickel copper. This stuff is fantastic. And for about $25, you can get a 25-foot coil. And make sure you buy the coil that comes with the fittings, because it's great to have these odd size nuts and such. But for a roll of 3/16, it's about $25, and then a roll of 1/4 inch, about $25. So for $50, you can make all your brake lines and have leftovers, because I'm actually starting out with leftovers. This is part of a 1/4 inch coil I had left over. I'm going to see if it's long enough to reach the back of the truck. And if it's not, I'll just use it up here to go down to the T that's going to feed the fronts, because this is going to be up front here. It'll be a 1/4 inch line down to a T that will feed 3/16 lines to each front corner, and then 1/4 inch from the master back to the hose, and then from that hose it went 3/16 to each corner. So that's how it goes. Let's see if this is long enough, and we'll get some flares made. All right, turns out that little leftover piece was not long enough, but I've got a new coil, 25-footer. So this will be plenty, and then we'll have lots of leftover for the next build, for sure. All right, I'm getting ready to make my first double flare. Just want to mention one thing. When you buy these coils of 25-foot, don't start with the fresh end that comes in the coil. On the coil cut, you want to cut off like a 1/4 inch off the end, because that's what you're supposed to see, but that's what you'll see when you buy the coil. It's kind of a weird end on it. Must be the way they cut them, but I always trim off about a 1/4 inch off the end. Then you can go ahead and use your tool of choice and make a double flare. Now I'm using a Master Cool hydraulic flare kit, but The only reason I had that is because I wanted to be able to make the GM push lock fittings and that sort of stuff. For decades, I used just a plain old manual double flare kit. It works just as well. But if you can get your hands on one of those Master Cool or similar hydraulic double flare kits, like down there in the box there, they work really well. They're well worth the money if you're going to do a lot of this stuff. If you're not, then the little, $25 manual kit works just fine. So we put the tube nut on here so don't forget. Get the double flare on there, and we'll run it up to the front. All right, front to back line is done. I'll show that in just a minute. For the front brakes, again, since I don't need any kind of proportioning or anything on this because it's all disc brakes, I'm just going to run out of the master cylinder to a T and split to both front wheels. Now, originally I was going to go 1/4-inch line to a T and then go 3/16 for each wheel. So I got a 1/4-inch brake T, which has the inverted seats in it. And this T, I even made this nifty little bracket for it. But this T, the inverted seats the openings are kind of bigger than I'm used to seeing. Usually they're much smaller, so you could use either a 3/16 line or a 1/4-inch. These look like they're pretty much 1/4-inch only. So rather than do that, I'm going to go 3/16 everywhere. 3/16 out of the master to a T, to a 3/16 T, and 3/16 each wheel. And the reason I can do that is the master cylinder is set up like I thought this would be. It has a much smaller opening in the port, and that'll take 3/16 line no problem. So to be safe, I'm not going to use this. We'll go 3/16 down to the T, 3/16 to each front wheel, and that will work just fine. Almost done. Brake lines don't take that long to do. The only thing to even mention here is if you're using a Jaguar front suspension, when you take it, make sure you save the 10mm nuts, because you'll need those to connect to the Jag hoses, and they work with 3/16 brake line, no problem. Double flare, just regular old standard stuff. So we'll put the last line in for the passenger side front, and over to the T, and we'll be good to go. One more thing off the list. Brake line's done. Not too difficult, but just, time consuming. Really nothing exciting about that. All it's left to do is fill it up with fluid and see how much leaks on the ground. All right, well, just one thing to add this week, and that's the brake lines. I'll call it 2 coils of 25, even though I didn't use both. In fact, I used both coils, but not all of it. That's probably enough to do 2 cars. But I'll call it 50 for 1 coil of 3/16 and 1 coil of 1/4-inch. That brings the truck value to $52.65, and out of pocket $20.95. So that's where we are so far on the 5,000 budget, $2,095. I'll get those brakes bled off of camera, so to say, because that's just more boring work. And then, again, I'd like to get this engine started. So I think the next thing will be fuel system. We'll get the fuel system done next, I think. I hope so. So that'll be it. That wasn't a whole lot in that video, but just, we're documenting the build. It's getting done. So we'll come back. We'll get to that. And, yeah, we'll see you then. Thanks for following. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for watching. See ya.